What's important about this specific model, and we'll get back to that in a couple of minutes' time, is that its focus is on the power that various companies traditionally had in the value chain and how this will change in the next few years. But let's get back to the heart of the presentation, the battle between the open network and the controlled network philosophies. It's also called the battle between the Ballids and the Netheads. And in order to describe the specific battle, let's quickly take a look at the background of each of these groups. Well, the Ballids are the engineers and the managers who grew up under the traditional telephone company. They love the specific practices that the traditional telephone companies normally had because it's all about dependable hardware techniques and rigorous quality control. If any telecommunication company wants to invest in any technology, they've got to ensure that their technology is adaptable to all the other telecommunication companies throughout the world. So therefore, they come together in bodies where they decide which technologies will be rolled out in the future. They wait till it's standardized, and only if it's standardized, then they roll it out in their networks with the knowledge that they can connect to all of these other networks throughout the world. This specific focus of the Ballids is that they believe in the controlled network philosophy. They believe in intelligence inside the network with all of these specific hardware techniques and applications so that they can interlink with similar networks in other countries. On the other end of the scale, we have the Netheads. Now, the Netheads are the young Turks who grew up in the world of the internet. They love the IP packet, and they believe that the internet packet and IP protocol is the most advanced communication system. Well, anyone that knows the IP packet environment will know that it's not a predictive system. It's a probabilistic system. And this really means that you're not 100% sure that each packet will go through, but the IP protocol enables the resending of all of these packets that might go missing throughout the network. In the current context, we find that 99.9% of packets find their destination. So a very high level of packets actually go through the network and can be relied upon to create a very reliable and rigid infrastructure. But that's not the basis on which it is built. The Netheads, however, believe in flexible and adaptive routing instead of fixed traffic control. And that's the most important element, that the Netheads believe in an open network. They really believe that the intelligence should be on the periphery of the network and not in the network itself. And the network should only be there to facilitate the transmission of internet packets. And that's the position of the Netheads. The Netheads believe in an open network, and that is really the key focus of where the whole development of the Netheads' future in internet connectivity will be. But let's quickly take a look at the key differences between these two groups. Well, the background is that the Ballids normally grew up in a TDM or time division multiplexing environment, and that's in the telecommunications space, where they give specific time slots to different people or different companies utilizing their telecommunication lines. The Netheads, however, grew up on the internet with the internet protocol, where different packets find their own route to their destination with very limited control from a hierarchical system. The Ballids formalized themselves in very formal structures. The International Telecommunication Union, for example, is the overhead body that manages the standards on a variety of telecommunication technologies. And this body is aligned with the United Nations, which is represented by a variety of countries. The Netheads, on the other end of the scale, comes together in open forums like the Internet Engineering Task Force. And whereas the Ballids believe in old boy clubs and very close relationship and close groups, the Netheads believe that the individual is only as important as the way in which he participates or the contribution he makes to the network. So two totally different mindsets. The Internet Engineering Task Force, the young Turks believing in IP and how IP will change the world, the Ballids coming from telecommunication companies believing in this old, rigid, hierarchical structures. And there's a very interesting battle that's awaiting between these two groups. To see what the battle is all about, let's take a look at a variety of differences. First of all, the difference in business philosophy. The Ballids believe that you should pay for quality. That means if you make a telephone call, they will promise quality and they expect people to pay for it. The netheads expect it to be cheap or even free of charge, because the same business model that they utilized in the traditional net environment, namely email and World Wide Web, they believe that once the connection is established, that if you pay for the connection, you can actually do whatever you like with this connection. So if you can send emails, you do that. Or if you want to visit the web, you can do that as well. You don't pay for the specific activities that you follow, except if you pay for specific content, but only then. The telecommunication companies love to charge you for one of our core needs. That is, people's a requirement to communicate with each other. So if I want to talk to anyone else in the world, the telecommunication companies expect me to pay a fee for that connection that is established between two individuals. However, with the increase in bandwidth, the bellheads have got a bit of a problem, because the nethead community can now allow the same quality of connectivity via the voice over IP infrastructure. And they utilize the same business model they used for email and web access, which is you have it free of charge once you pay for your connection. And this is where the big battle comes in. So that's one of the key differences in the business philosophy between the bellheads and the netheads. You will also see that the bellheads believe in strong regulatory control to protect their interest, where the netheads really want an open and unregulated playing field. And you'll also see that the different technologies these two groups use is quite different in the way they're constructed. The bellheads believe that they should steer the future of network evolution and manage it, because only then can standards be accepted by all the players in the field, where the netheads really see how the network evolves itself organically. Applications like Skype, no one planned it. A couple of entrepreneurs came together, wrote the application, and it became commonly accepted in the internet community. And yet it was on no one's long-term strategic planning focus. So the network really evolves organically in that regard, especially if we focus on the applications on the edges of the network. But let's take a look at the bellheads and nethead views on IP telephony. The IP telephony business model is quite different between these two groups. The bellheads believe that you should pay for a telephone call that makes up the time you talk, the distance that you have the conversation over, and the bandwidth that you utilize. And that equates to the revenues that the bellheads normally get from this conversation that takes place. They also believe in international settlements between different telecommunication companies, and sometimes it's quite a steep fee where you pay interconnect fees between one network and the other. On the internet, however, we see that the business model is similar to that of email. That means that the world is a large free calling area. You never have to pay for a telephone call anymore once you have your data fee or your data line paid off. So why would it make sense to charge every single person for every single email they send? Well, that business model is not the correct business model in the nethead space. You can send as many emails as you like. You don't pay per email. And they are saying the same argument holds for telephone calls. The same business model that was therefore applicable to the web, to file transfer protocol, and to email, the traditional applications, are now being made applicable to a variety of other higher end or higher bandwidth required applications. And this is the key battle between the bellheads and the netheads. The business models are fundamentally different. Some other key differences are also apparent if we take a look at the future of these two groupings, of how they see the future itself. The bellheads believe that the network ends in the call agent, where the open network camp believes that the network ends in the end user device. If we take a look at a telephone, for example, that telephone is not part of the network. It only becomes part of the network once I pick it up and I dial a number, and that actually means that I become part of the network.